Hey everyone, Jeff here with the Death Star Human Resources Department newsletter podcast version. Today we are going to talk about The Hunt for Ben Solo, and I am joined by Jenn and Kimberly, who are deep in the weeds with this, and we're gonna talk all about it. So thanks for coming on, both of you. I appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Before we get into it, where can people find out about The Hunt for Ben Solo online, and where can people find you if you'd like?
Well, I can start. So the best place to find information about the fan campaign to save the Hunt for Ben Solo film is savebensolo.com. There you can find links to all of our social media platforms. We're on all of them. You name it, we're probably there. And if there's one that you'd like to see, message us on one of the other ones and we'll see if we can get it going.
All right. I'm just drawing a blank on what I was about to say. So
did you want a personal, where you can find us, or?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
sure.
Jen.
Sure. So I'm on Instagram. You can find me. I'm Jen, the Gen X Nerd. And actually, I'm Jen Davies, the Gen X Nerd. And I'm also on Blue Sky. So same handle. So if you're interested in connecting, I'd be happy to meet anybody.
And I'm on. I had very little involvement with any social media before October 20th of last year, and now I have Twitter and Blue Sky and Instagram, and I don't have a heavy presence on any of them, but I check in every day a little bit just to see what's going on with things.
Well, we'll make sure to put links.
Variation of purple blue stocking.
All right, cool. We'll make sure to put links in the show notes as well. All right, and I forgot to mention, Jen, it took me far too long to realize the Gen X Nerd, like that it's a homophone. I don't know. Grammar's not my thing, but it definitely took me too long to get that. And also, we are joined by Adam Driver, who's with Jen today.
Absolutely. He was with us in Toronto, which I believe we're going to talk about later.
Yes, I'm excited to talk about that. So to start out, for those who maybe have only heard the name in passing or aren't really aware, what's going on with what is the Hunt for Ben Solo? Like, can you kind of start from the beginning, kind of last fall when this kind of came out?
Yeah. So
Kimberly, you mentioned October 20th. You want to take this one?
Yeah, that's when an article was released by Associated Press. Adam Driver had been giving an interview just about movie making in general, and just dropped this bomb that he and Steven Soderbergh had thought that Ben Solo needed, another chapter of his story, and so they spent 2 years working on a story and working with a screenwriter, and Lucasfilm loved it, and they were getting, they had a script written by Scott Burns, who did Bourne Ultimatum, things like that, and they were getting ready to film, and then Disney pulled the plug because Bob Iger, the CEO at the time, said, we don't get how Ben Solo could be alive. And a lot of fans were just outraged because this sounded, Adam literally said this is one of the coolest scripts he's ever been involved with. And, I love Star Wars. I want more Star Wars. I want more good Star Wars. And the idea of this film being shot down when it sounded like it had so much potential with a character that so many people love, that just kind of sparked this grassroots uprising. Somebody, I think that very day, paid to have a plane fly over Disney headquarters saying, "Save Ben Solo." And it just kind of went from there.
It surprised me that Disney had this script basically handed to them. You have a script written, you have the star attached, you have a director ready to go, and they just said no. When you compare, I think Disney kind of takes a lot of crap for announcing Star Wars products that don't come to fruition. But if you kind of take a look at what they've announced, they actually have a better track record of getting across the finish line than people kind of give them credit for. But at the same time, a lot of the stuff announced has already been done. A lot of the movies that we say, oh, there's going to be the new trilogy, or there's going to be the Taika Waititi movie, or whatever. Those are all kind of out in the ether. Mm-hmm. That there's maybe not a script. Who knows kind of what stage of development it's even in. And for Disney to say, hey, we're getting this handed to us on a plate, and to turn it down, it just struck me as I don't understand kind of the logic behind it.
They're either completely out of touch, or there's something going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. But yeah, I mean, they've announced so many movies since Rise of Skywalker, and a lot of them
Mhm.
have just fizzled out or are stuck in development hell. And like you said, this seemed like a no-brainer. You have a director who's won an Oscar. The script is already done. You know, Adam and Steven Soderbergh and Scott Z. Burns have worked together on projects that have done well. So it just seemed like so obvious, and Lucasfilm loved it. So
Yeah, that's the thing that I always read was that Kathleen Kennedy, Dave Filoni, and Carrie Beck were like, heck yeah, we're doing this. And
Yeah,
then
exactly.
you know I asked this. I did another interview regarding this, and I just said, has Bob Iger actually watched Star Wars?
Doesn't seem like it, does it?
because people
Like,
come back from the dead all the time. So for once,
Mhm.
bring back somebody I want to come back. Nobody
Exactly.
left Palpatine.
right? Like
No.
we're in the middle of we're recording this on April 11th. We've just watched the first 2 episodes of the Darth Maul show,
Okay.
which, to be fair, Darth Maul was brought back to life years ago, but they've gotten a lot of mileage out of a character that died in 1999.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I mean, we all loved him then. I was
Yeah.
very sad when he was alive. I was like, oh, I thought he was going to be the big bad. That was going to be great. No. But about what we know about the film, if I just can support
Yeah,
some of what
absolutely.
Kimberly said around the business piece of all this. Again, that's not my back. I'm a counselor, so what do I know about the movie business? Nothing really, except to say that I think there were probably some human pieces of this that Bob Iger maybe didn't take into account. So, for example, we know from Steven Soderbergh's Blue Sky posts, because that's his only social media. He is on Blue Sky. So this is one of the reasons I'm on Blue Sky. I was like, Steven, hello. He actually asked Kathleen Kennedy and then shared this information on Blue Sky. Has a movie ever gone as far in production as we went with Lucasfilm, only to be canceled by Disney? And Kathleen admitted to him, never. This has never happened before. And so from those human pieces, like I really feel for the people who got jerked around here.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, Adam and Steven, and because they're not ever going to be compensated until this film gets made. It's not an if, it's a when. and now Steven may not actually get compensated because we'll talk about it later. He's just, he's decided he's not going to, try to drive this forward. But I feel also for Kathleen, like she had made, because she was head of Lucasfilm still at that time, she had promised these guys that this was going to go ahead, right? There's an understanding, there was an understanding that it was going to happen. We actually know from there were leaks to a writer for an online magazine called The Playlist that he was able to share after Adam came forward with his interview that some early pre-production art had even gone ahead. And for making it, like, it was that far along. Like the meeting with Bob Iger and Alan Bergman when the thing got canceled was really just pro forma. Right. I'm sure like that's how Soderbergh, Driver, and Kennedy went into it. Well, this is just pro forma. I got to sit down with the money guys and make sure we're good to go. It was not what anybody was expecting that meeting to be about. So because I'm a social scientist, I look at the human piece. I'm just like, man, like so on the human side of business, like what a way to burn bridges.
Right.
I mean, they had a filming schedule all made. They had a start date to start filming. They were hiring staff. I mean, this was full steam ahead. And then
have any of the pre-production artwork, has anything made it online, or we just know it's out there?
Zero. Which actually gives us hope that Lucasfilm really wants to do it, because they're like, do not.
If you leak stuff, then they can't use it. So
yeah, this sounds like it would be in Dave Filoni's wheelhouse.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so
totally.
What was I guess kind of Jen, when we kind of got Kimberly's reaction, kind of when you heard about this back in the fall as well, kind of what was your initial reaction when you heard like, oh, there's this there's this script out there, this sounds cool?
Oh, same as Kimberly Rage. So just by coincidence. So a friend of mine actually somehow had never seen all of the Star Wars movies. So he and his partner were actually watching them in chronological order by story. So they started with episode 1 and had kind of walked their way through. And I stepped in at my favorite, the Empire Strikes Back is still my absolute favorite Star Wars movie. But I stepped in there. So, I got to watch, all of those with them. And of course, at the end of The Rise of Skywalker, rage. But because Ben should not have died, right? Well, you can get into that at some point, but that was just like, wow, like rotten story making. So I actually had gone down an Adam Driver rabbit hole and had watched over a couple of months everything Adam had ever done.
Oh, wow.
And including like I found bits of like Law and Order episodes on YouTube and stuff. I was like, did he have any other Ben Solo? That's pretty much what I was looking for. Is there any other Ben out there? So I actually found out about it from my Google algorithm because it is saturated with Adam. And it was rage. First, sadness and rage. But I was going to suffer alone until I saw the airplane. Again, my algorithm was full. And so it fed me the airplane going over Disney Burbank Studios. And I went, oh, I don't have to be angry alone. Because like Kimberly, I had not really been involved. Yeah, I had not been involved in online fandom. I'm actually just learning now about some of the, ins and outs of Star Wars online fandom. And so I went out and found, well, who are these Ben Solo people? Because they sound like they could be my kind of people. And it turns out they are, which is awesome.
Kind of similar with Jen. So I found out from my teenage daughter, because again, I wasn't on social media, but she texted our little family chat, oh, hey, did you know there was this Ben Solo movie that they were going to make and it got canceled? And just to give you a sense of my response, my kids were like, whoa, Mom never uses all caps. I was so mad. And then I thought, you know what? There's got to be a petition out there. And I looked up change.org, and sure enough, there were two of them. So I signed both. And then I somehow stumbled across this Discord server. I didn't even know what Discord was or how it worked. But by golly, I'm getting on it. I'm going to do something about this because I'm like, I have wanted a continuation of Ben Solo's story for years. And if this doesn't happen, I have no one to blame but myself if I don't dive in and do something about it. So I am.
I thought the reaction was really I don't know if astonishing is the right word. I was kind of surprised like how strong it was. Because I thought I read about it and I was like, oh, that sounds like a cool movie. That's something I would like. And because again, I want more Star Wars as well. And then I kind of went on, a couple days later, I was kind of poking around online and I was like, oh wow, there's the plane, and then just there was the billboard in Times Square and just all sorts of stuff. There was I talked to Rachel, who stood outside the Disney headquarters dressed up as Rey. That was a fun talk. And just all these people that really got involved. And I think my question has kind of been is, what is it about this movie or this proposed movie? Because we really don't know much about it.
Yeah.
What do you think it is that's really kind of captured people's imaginations? I think in a way that if you said, oh, we're going to do, I don't know, we're going to actually make Rangers. I'm trying to think of what something that's been canceled. We're going to make Rangers of the New Republic. That I think is probably, I think Ben Solo has kind of captured people's imaginations in a way that not everything Star Wars related would.
I think it's partly a testament to the character of Ben Solo. I mean, I love all the characters, and I love sequels characters. The plots and the execution and all that obviously had issues, but I love Finn and Poe and Rey and Ben. I even love Hux vicariously because my daughter likes him. I even like Rose by the end. But Ben, I think, was the best part of the sequels. Adam Driver is a phenomenal actor. And let's face it, did anyone ever really think Rey was going to go dark?
No.
I think most of us knew she was the good guy. She was the Luke Skywalker. She was going to be fine in the end. The real question was always Ben Solo. Is he going to turn back to the light? Is he going to go dark? What that is going to look like? And so the idea of having another movie about that character, I think, is just, wonderful. But also, my biggest gripe with Disney, with the sequels, is that it's just been such a mishmash of, trying to plan a movie by committee and, no focus, no vision. And here's a movie that was made by people who love Star Wars, love this character. You had all the pieces together, the actor, the director, the script. It was all there, and it could have been awesome. And instead, we've got Disney just kind of bumbling along, trying to get anything into a theater that might be good. But who knows how much they've meddled with. Like I said, I want more good Star Wars, and this sounded awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. And if I can jump in,
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of Star Wars fans who, adore they're OG, fans of the OG, 4, 5, 6, like myself. And the Han and Leia romance is, one of the most iconic, romances in all of probably film. And who doesn't want to find out what happens to their family,
Right.
And again, Luke, couldn't, was busy, never had, had a family of his own. So like, Ben is it, that's all we've got in the film universe, to continue the Skywalker legacy. A lot of us were rooting for Ben to, sort of break the Skywalker curse, because we know what happens to Anakin. Luke doesn't have a lot of great luck. Leia doesn't have a lot of luck and love either. So maybe, the last chance here will break that curse. That would be nice. And as someone who is a consumer of art, I don't consider myself an artist very much, but as someone who is a consumer of art, the fact that Adam wanted to do this. So first of all, like, folks, I'm learning now, I didn't realize, because I wasn't really in online Star Wars fandom either. Apparently there was a really nasty thing that happened on social media directed at particularly Adam and Daisy, about the ending of The Rise of Skywalker, which they had nothing to, like, they had to do what was on the page. I mean, like, let's remember, actors don't get a lot of choice sometimes in how they, deliver their work. So they had to do what was on the page. But the result was that nobody really knew if Adam had any interest in ever playing Kylo Ren or Ben Solo ever again, because I mean, he didn't talk about himself hardly ever anyway. And then after that, there were interviews where he didn't even want to talk about Star Wars anymore. And so the fact that he actually came up with this idea and found, someone who he thought would be, a good person to tell the story that he'd kind of been rattling around in his head. For me, that was compelling as well. And the artist actually wants to do this again.
Right.
Oh, wow. That's really, to me, that's really exciting. I love it when people do things about which they're excited, and so, that for me, that was compelling too.
I know back even in the 80s, Billy D. Williams would say, like, people would come up to him at, he was picking his kids up at school or whatever, and, get on his case about, Lando betrayed Han. And I am always begging Star Wars fans, like, please learn the difference between the actor and the character they play. Like, Ahmed Best should not have gotten all the shit that he got for Phantom Menace. Like, say what you want about Jar Jar's character.
Yeah.
But, it's not Ahmed's fault. I mean,
he read the lines that were on the page.
Yes,
and the voice they told him to use.
Harrison Ford's famous line of, was it, George, you can write this shit, but you can't say it. Like, clunky dialogue is a Star Wars tradition, let's be honest.
It's true.
All right. And Kimberly, to go to a point you made, this is something I like to talk about a lot, in that, whatever you want to say about the prequels, they were George's vision. And, he had to make money on them, obviously, but he really only had to answer to himself. He didn't have, it's gone from, Emperor Palpatine running the show to the questionably functioning New Republic government in Disney, where you have so many other parties involved that have kind of a stake in it or whatever. So I think that has kind of always been one of my beefs with the sequel trilogy as well. I'm not a sequel trilogy hater by any stretch of the imagination, but they have always kind of felt like a little disjointed.
Definitely.
But we are not here to relitigate the sequels, because I think we'd probably be here all day.
No, right, they are what they are. But let me add one more thing that I think a lot of us in the Save the Hunt for Ben Solo community are excited about is, and anybody I talk to, even if they're not like part of the community, I even met someone new yesterday who I didn't even know was a Star Wars fan, and I was explaining what we were doing, and he's like, "Oh, a Ben Solo movie would totally fix a lot of it." Yes, yes. So you get it. I don't even have to sell you on this. There's just so much room for improving the sequels if we just did one more, just like tie up some things that weren't quite right.
Right, that is Skywalker would bug me so much less if it was just a mediocre middle chapter and not the finale of a 9-film saga. Come on.
Yeah, we've got 9 films. What's one more?
Oh, yeah, what's one more? Let's end it on a good note.
And I like to include Rogue One, actually. So we're already at 10. So 11. 11's a great number.
It's a good number. All right, so kind of, I know you guys are more involved in the fandom. I know weren't the original people. Do you know how it kind of the kind of Hunt for Ben Solo movie came together, or movement came together? Sorry.
Oh, the movement.
Yes, we know how the movie is not coming together. How did the movement come together?
Well, I don't know.
Yet, Jeff. So it's my understanding, actually, that it kind of began, and yeah, I could be wrong. So if there are people out there, please message Jeff and do a podcast episode and clarify.
Yes.
But it's my understanding that it was actually some of the old school Reylos. And for folks who don't know what or who a Reylo is, that's a combination of Rey and Kylo, or Rey and Ben Solo. And they were folks who there were folks even from The Force Awakens who sort of identified, oh, there could be kind of a romantic subplot happening here. And so they have sort of been, big fans of the romantic angle for Rey and Ben for a very long time. And they were, during the sequels, kind of, working their way through the production process, very active, on social media. And they never really went away. They just got quiet because there's no new content, for them to participate in. And so it was my understanding that kind of when they all read the October 20 interview with Adam, they all went, ooh, here's some content that we could get excited about again if we can get this movie made. So that's my understanding kind of like who became the little part of the snowball, that's now getting a lot bigger as momentum continues to build.
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize. I've never been in like the shipping fandom. That's like that's not something that's ever really interested me. But I guess it almost feels like the Reylos were kind of like cicadas. Like they went underground for a few years because you're absolutely right. They're after 2019. They're really, you had Mando and the shows, but nothing Rey related other than I guess she popped up in some of like the Lego movies and stuff like that, which kind of as a slight tangent always kind of surprised me because they've said they want Rey to be like the face of Star Wars, and to basically do nothing with her or nothing substantial since 2019. I mean, I think it's probably a much better argument that Grogu is the face of Star Wars these days. For now, until this movie gets made.
Speaking to the Reylo thing, I mean, that's how I found about the Discord server was occasionally I'd browse the Reylo subreddit to see what people were talking about. And somebody mentioned, hey, there's this Discord server. Come join us if you want to lobby for this movie. And I'm like, okay. Figured out where Discord is.
So you guys were recently at Toronto Comic Con spreading the word of Ben Solo. Like, I saw Jen. I saw your pictures online that you and Kimberly and Adam were spreading the good word. So what kind of setup did you guys have there, and kind of what was the reaction you got from people that were attending?
Do you want to start, Kimberly?
Sure. So we actually hoped to get like a table in the community section and have activities people could do, and for whatever reason, we were put on the wait list and stayed there. And so we just decided it was Jen's idea to make this big full-size cutout of Ben Solo from some original artwork from somebody else in the campaign. Her artist name is Altocello, and she did a fabulous job. And I thought we were going to have to walk around with him and try and get people to talk to us, but we just parked at the bottom of an escalator where dozens of people were coming down at any given moment. And sooner or later, every few minutes, somebody would walk up and be curious or be like, Ben Solo, and they want a picture with him. And so, some of them knew about the movie, some didn't. And we just spent the whole day talking with people and taking pictures, put them on Instagram. And sometimes we'd go up to, sometimes we'd walk around and find people to take pictures with, and they were always very excited to do it. It was my first Comic-Con. I dressed up as Leia, and I learned that it's delightful when someone wants to take your picture with you. And so anyway, Jen, how about you?
Oh, absolutely. So for context, Kimberly was doing an excellent sequel era Leia, and people absolutely recognized, who you were. So it didn't hurt that, you were standing with Ben. I was the Ben Wrangler, so I wasn't dressed up as anyone in particular. I just kind of looked Star Wars adjacent was my goal. And I learned absolutely that my first Comic-Con as well, I learned that cosplayers are delighted when you ask them to be in a photograph. Many of them totally recognized Ben, and were, if they were a Star Wars person or just a science fiction person, we're very excited about that as well. And if you ask to tag them on Instagram, you're their new best friend. So we did a lot of this, tagging other people, selfishly hoping to ride their coattails a little bit. Like, oh, if you have a fandom, then they're going to see this picture, when you repost it.
But in fairness, they
had a
want to ride our
wonderful
coattails
time.
too. So it works for everybody.
Absolutely.
Anyway, go on, Jen.
Yeah. And my favorite moment actually was, so we thought we had gotten everybody. We had made a point of actually visiting the 501st Legion. So they had one of the, community fun tables, and they were doing a great job. I mean, they do charitable work, and, they
awesome.
had a wonderful setup. They were very kind and let us stop at every station and take a picture with their people in Ben. So we thought we had gotten everybody. Just as we were about to end of 2 days, we were exhausted, things were wrapping up, the crowd was starting to thin out. So we had started to think, okay, maybe let's head out. And a Return of the Jedi era Luke Skywalker literally ran up to us and said, "Can I take a picture?" Which was amazing. I thought we had gotten him, but apparently we had missed him. So he was like, "Can I be?" Of course, we put everything down and we're in a picture with him. It was just wonderful to see how people were recognizing, Ben. Yeah. Some people recognized it was Adam Driver. Actually, a few people stopped by when they saw us and said, "We saw Adam's head bobbing along in the crowd," because I'm carrying him when we're moving, and that was pretty funny too. But the people just excited, to be in a photo with Ben was really encouraging.
That's really cool. And if I remember, Adam Driver is not a guy who does cons either, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't think so.
He's done one. He said he did one, and he would never do it again because he couldn't basically participate. Right? He said at one point he was like, "Well, I want to go get a coffee," and they were like, "Well, you have to wear a mask."
Right? Yeah, everyone. Yeah, if you just go out on the floor,
we get mobbed.
Yeah, he kind of, I'm trying to think, like, Natalie Portman doesn't really do them, and it's kind of one of those, he'll save that for if he needs the money.
Pretty much.
Tangentially, one of my favorite things that we did at the con was that there were a handful of celebrities there, nobody I really recognized with one exception, Carrie Elwes, who was Wesley in The Princess Bride.
Oh, yeah.
And, I thought, maybe we should take a picture with Wesley and Ben. And at first I just, said it as a joke almost, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought that would be so cool. I mean, A, the picture, but B, I love The Princess Bride. I love Carrie Elwes. Anyway, so we get in line and he's in this curtained off booth and they let you in one group at a time. And so it's our turn. There's somebody in there ahead of us. They let us in and we walk in with Ben Solo next to us. And Gary looks over and he does a double take. Anyway, but he was very gracious, just very friendly, and took a picture with us and Ben. And I don't know, part of me kind of, I love that I got to meet him, but I also kind of love the fact that, how many Comic-Cons has he done? I'm sure he's seen everything, but apparently he hadn't seen a 6-foot blue Ben Solo coming. I love that.
No, and I believe he said he had very rarely been asked to be in a photo with a cutout. This may have been the first.
Yeah, he won't forget that one.
I bet not. Sure,
Who are those weird ladies with the Adam Driver cutout? Yeah.
Well, Carrie, if you're listening, we'd love to have you come on as well, and we can talk about the hunt from Ben Solo from your perspective. I'm sure he's watching.
I would love that. Can I share another couple of fun moments from Toronto Comic-Con, Jeff? Awesome.
Yes.
So another moment that I loved, so the 501st, of course, they're, again, wonderful. And so they were actually sending people, so there's 2 levels to the Metro Toronto Convention Center, which is where Fan Expo and Toronto Comic-Con happened. And so their booth was upstairs and kind of a little bit of a crowded area. So they were sending cosplayers down to just, take pictures, be friendly, put on little, lightsaber battles and stuff. And Kimberly and I decided that, I decided and Kimberly agreed. You were very kind, Kimberly. I just get an idea stuck in my head. I'm like, we have to do this. To get photos of people who had been dead and had come back. So I was like, okay, we got to find some Ahsoka Tanos. And there was, we got Ahsoka. And there was a woman who was doing a spectacular Asajj Ventress. And so, I think she might have been one of our first like big asks too. I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm nervous about asking her because she's so good, and I've got a cutout, but she will, But anyway, so we shyly walked over, and of course there were people lined up to take pictures with her or whatever. And then we, very shyly, excuse me, Ms. What I call it, Lady Ventress. I was asking Kimberly, I was like, do you remember how I'm supposed to address her? Like, I honestly, I haven't played the games, but I know who she is. So I think I called her lady. I was like, excuse me, Lady Ventress, you know something about coming back from the dead. Would you be willing to be in a picture with Ben Solo, who might like to come back from the dead? And her face, her face was a little stuck because she's wearing a lot of latex,
Right.
to do that. But her eyes got big and she was like, yes. So she
That's
totally
awesome.
recognized what this was. And that was just so sweet because I was in awe of her, and then she saw this and she was like, yeah.
Yep.
It's a mutual admiration.
Fun fact, she called another cosplayer over who was her dad dressed up as sequel era Luke. So you get this big scruffy gray bearded guy with the nephew that he tried to kill, and it's not his Ventress who came back from the dead. It was just, serendipity.
Oh, that is absolutely fantastic. And that, Asajj Ventress is one as we were kind of talking about people in the Star Wars universe who had died, I thought of she's even died within canon, and come back to life.
Yep.
She was just back to life, what was it, last year, I think, in the Tales from the Underworld. So I was like,
exactly.
Come on, Bob. Don't you know what your own product is?
Yeah.
It's people
probably
back
from the
dead.
Not. No.
Probably
and
not.
One more, fun story, if I may, from Toronto Comic-Con. And Kimberly, of course, jump in if you've got one. But a really, positive memory for me was, oh shoot, what was the story I was going to tell? There were so many. Have you got one on the tip of your tongue, Kimberly?
One that comes to mind is, so there was an area where you could rest, have a seat, eat your pizza, play a game. And they had staff that were just, monitoring, making sure everything was clean. And there was this one girl in her 20s that we got chatting with every time we'd go in and sit down. And by the end, she took a picture of Ben and posted it on her Instagram. She said, I'm not even a Star Wars fan, but I just love how passionate you guys are about this. And, so even she supported it. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. And she even did it as a surprise. I don't know when she took that photo.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was coming.
That's awesome.
Super sweet. But I remember what I wanted to say. So we're also looking for people who'd come back from the dead for other things. So again, Adam, in his interview on October 20th, definitely encourage people to read it. I can provide you any links you want, Jeff.
Oh, yeah.
We'll
put
track
links
of these
in the
things.
show notes.
Adam didn't say, I would like my fan base to do something, but those of us who are Adam fans were like, he never tells us how he feels about anything.
Mm-hmm.
This has gotta mean something. And he doesn't even like to talk about Star Wars in it, right? It's pulling teeth to get him to talk about it. So, and if you read the article, if folks don't remember, the writer set it up very well. Adam had him in Adam's own office, which again, Adam usually doesn't do, right? And there was all this Star Wars stuff everywhere, which none of us knew because Adam doesn't share anything about himself, right? So we're like, holy mackerel, this has got to be meaningful for this guy if he's willing to have a guy in his office seeing the personal stuff and talking about and who would talk about a failed project, right? Reading between all of these very thick lines here, we're we think Adam wants us to do something kind of Deadpool-esque. So we made a point of trying to get every Deadpool who we could pin down.
Nice.
And I would explain it to them. Like, look, you know how Ryan Reynolds leaked the footage? We don't even have footage. So we made this instead. And they were like, absolutely. So they were very happy to be in photographs because, you can argue that what we're doing is trying to pull a Deadpool here. And the movie was almost there. And then for some reason got stopped and, got to get it over the line. That's all.
One other little memory from the con is we kind of wanted to get a Skywalker family album. So, we took a picture with Padme, variations of Luke, and of course we had to find a Darth Vader. And so, we went up to the 501st, which people don't know, they're this group of really serious cosplayers. I mean, they have guidelines for what you have to have when you're stormtrooper armor for it to be, approved. Anyway. And so there was a Vader up there, and we asked to take, would he mind taking a picture with his grandson? And so we got this picture of Darth Vader going next to Ben. And after we took the picture, he's like, this is so awesome. And that just warmed my little, Ben Solo loving heart. That is great.
Oh,
Thanks. That's great. And
that is great.
501st, somebody told us, the people who play Darth Vader in our group are the nicest guys. All sorts of ironic, but cool.
Yeah. And one of our most popular pictures was actually a huge person playing Chewbacca. Been a great thing. He was giving hugs to everybody, but he was totally happy to have it. That was a big hit, that one.
Yep.
So for anyone who wants
Chewie
to get involved with the Hunt for Ben Solo movie, what can people do? And I know you guys do some like monthly events and stuff like that. Like what's kind of going on right now?
Well, right now, our hottest event, depending on when this podcast comes out, is on, I believe it's April 28th. Let me check my calendar. That's embarrassing. I should know the date. No, Sunday, April 26th. Excuse me. Sunday, okay. April 26th. We have paid for a showing of The Last Jedi at a movie theater just outside Los Angeles. So anyone who's in reach of Southern California and you're a big, Star Wars fan, you enjoy the sequels, you would love to see Ben Solo, let me encourage you to be there because you'll be in a movie theater filled with fellow people who adore Ben. So let me encourage you to do that. The details are on savebensolo.com. But other activities we're doing, right now we're doing an art challenge. That's actually why Ben has butterflies. He's not sure where they came from, but he said they're pretty, so I can leave them there. And that's an art challenge. So we're doing a spring art challenge. So last week, of course, was Easter for those who celebrate it. So we had a theme of like eggs. So we had people drawing on eggs and recreating scenes from the sequels with eggs, which was adorable. This week's butterflies. I forget what the theme is for next week. You'll have to follow us on social media to find out.
Yeah, I saw all the egg photos last week. I was like, all right, there's something going on here.
Well, and that's the point. I mean, we want to do things that get Disney's attention, but we also want to get the word out. I think more people would be clamoring for this movie if they've even heard about it. Again, there were people at the Comic-Con, people who are Star Wars geeks that didn't know about this movie. And so we figure if we put enough stuff out on social media, people will hear about it. But it's fun. This is a marathon campaign. We don't know if it's going to get approved next week, next month, next year, next decade. Hopefully not next decade. Adam will be in his 50s.
It's getting old. Come on.
But, we want to keep it fun, too, because this is such a wonderful community of people who love Star Wars. I mean, the little meetups that I've gone to in the last few months, my favorite part has just been being with other Star Wars geeks, talking about things we love, our hopes for this, but also the love of Star Wars. It's such a wonderful universe. Absolutely.
And actually, maybe we should say, Kimberly, we did not know each other before we showed up at the hotel room that we rented. Both of our husbands were like, okay, go have fun with the random person you met on the internet.
My husband's like, do you know this person? I've seen some of her videos. I'm sure she's fine. I know she's Canadian. What could go wrong?
Exactly. They're well-known, polite people.
This is true. But we got on great. And I think a lot of it is, I think, there's a certain kind of person who's willing to commit to investing their time and their dollars. We are not funded by Disney. Let's address that one. We are not funded, but this is self-funded. He was not cheap.
But he was worth it.
I think on that basis, I was confident, Kimberly, that we were going to get along. It's like, well, yeah, Kimberly's willing to drive from Boston to Toronto to make this happen. So,
all right. One of the things
other monthly events. So again, we do in-person things, we do online things. We have a monthly watch party. So we've been celebrating the works of Steven Soderbergh and Adam Driver. We're going to focus on Adam Driver, going forward, and we'll talk about Wiley in a minute. And our next movie coming up April 18th, probably will miss that publication or with this publication, but it's The Report. And then you get a preview, Jeff, that the next movie event will actually be a sequel movie marathon.
Ooh, fun.
So what's a watch party? In case anybody's wondering, if they want to join the sequel movie marathon, it'll be the weekend before May the 4th. Okay. You need to get your own copy because, of course, for copyright, we cannot broadcast the films.
Right.
You get your own copy.
It's very strict on that.
They are. Yeah, absolutely. Most film owners are.
Yeah.
I mean, They're expensive to make, so you need your own copy, but you can join me or Kimberly or Rachel. Actually, we'll be hosting one of them on YouTube, and we'll have things in the chat box. We'll have a little commentary. Not enough to distract, but a few things to keep folks engaged throughout the film, so you can meet other people in the chat box while enjoying the sequel films.
Well, speaking of the films, Jen, I think you and I talked about this a little bit beforehand, but redemption plays such a big role in the Star Wars universe, and it seemed to me that this movie, I think Ben got some redemption at the end of Rise of Skywalker, but this movie seemed to be like the chance for him, and I kind of wanted to see kind of your thoughts on that and kind of redemption in Star Wars and where you think the movie would kind of fit in with that whole theme.
Absolutely, but I think Kimberly has some ideas on that. Kim, do you want to go first?
Either way is good. I'm here to listen and learn.
I'll try to be concise. So I honestly think that J.J. Abrams is big in like harking back to past Star Wars and things that people loved, and I honestly think that they were trying to make Rise of Skywalker a reboot of like Return of the Jedi. I mean, not a reboot, but similar to that, just like Force Awakens was so much like Episode 4. The trouble is the characters were very different. In Return of the Jedi, having Vader be a martyr at the end worked, I think, partly because he had been so unabashedly evil. I mean, choking people for the littlest thing. He just like threw himself wholeheartedly into the dark side. Ben was never that way. He was conflicted all through it. I mean, he'd do something bad and then feel terrible about it, or balk at doing terrible things. When they blow up when Starkiller Base blows up the government, you don't know what he's thinking. You just see him watching those beams go across and just standing there still. And I have to think he's probably thinking, this is Alderaan all over again. My mom's going to be devastated. When am I going to stop hating being part of it? But again, like I said earlier, he's kind of the main character of the sequels. He's the one you're watching to see what's going to happen. And so you're invested in him. You know him. When Return of the Jedi came out, we didn't really know Vader. He was just a scary guy in a mask. And so it's not too hard to let him go. But when Ben, who's had such a tragic life and has tried so hard to claw his way back to the light and find his way, and he finally does, and then he dies a few minutes later, that just feels, it's not satisfying, it's tragic. Especially when they've played up the relationship that he has with Rey, and whether you want that to be romantic or not, they're a huge part of each other's lives. She's always wanted someone to connect with, and he's taken away from her right when she gets him, and it doesn't feel satisfying. Plus, we've already done the martyrdom thing. I'd like to see a redemption where Ben gets to atone for things that he's done and find out how to live a good life, that you can atone and find redemption without dying. That's actually kind of an unhopeful approach, and Star Wars is supposed to be about hope.
Absolutely. And as I'm a professional counselor, is sort of my educational and professional background, and one of the things that I think more films should be doing, and some are, so I'm hopeful, and I think a Ben Solo film could also do, would be, as Kimberly said, to kind of role model what does a life look like when, instead of dying to make up for the wrongs that you've done, actually you have to live and make up for the wrongs that you've done. That is way more interesting, way more realistic, and it's way harder. Before I actually even encountered the Save the Hunt for Ben Solo community, I launched a blog. That was my outlet. I was like writing about what was bothering me. And the title of that very first blog post is "Living is way harder." Or no, dying isn't the hardest thing. Living is way harder. And I would have liked to see Ben live, because there's no prison that was going to be able to hold him. So obviously there was going to have to be some negotiation about how is this going to work then, that you've decided you're not going to be, the universe's biggest mass murderer anymore. And
that was hard.
Try to make up for, some of the stuff that you've done. Way more exciting, and also him coming to terms with the fact that I am the galaxy's greatest mass murderer. How do I,
Right.
and I don't, and I regret all of it. And, what am I going to do about that? So, I think, that would have been a way more interesting thing. And I can remember vividly sitting in the theater in 2019, and in the few seconds that we had when Rey is revived, and before Ben collapses, I wrote the next 3 movies in my head, and I actually leaned over to my husband and whispered. I have a bad habit of whispering during movies, but so leaned over to my husband and whispered and said, "The next 3 movies are going to be amazing." And then,
Yeah.
why would you leave $3 billion on the table like that, Disney? Like, I can write those movies in my head. Cleaning up the First Order, trying to make good with, Uncle Chewie, and the droids, and, like, oh my God, like, just like the interpersonal drama, but also the political drama would have been like incredible, and the action, like I can still see them. And I'm just like, what were you thinking?
And I know the Rey New Jedi Order movie is out there allegedly. Every year they're like, oh well, it's still on our list to do. We're just on our 10th writer by now. And to me, it's a natural pairing of the two of them, a dyad, if you will, of the Rey movie of she's got to come to terms with how do I rebuild the Jedi Order when I am a Palpatine by blood, or a Palpatine clone by blood, however you want to get into that. And you can kind of have, the Ben Solo movie go along with that of, how do I come to terms with that I was, the Darth Vader of the First Order? How do I come to terms with, the dark side is in me, I killed my dad, like all the things. And I think the two would just, it would work really well together. Like you'd have one movie. You really shouldn't have the Rey movie without the Ben movie.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see. I'd much rather see a Jedi Order built by the two of them because they have two very unique perspectives. I mean, Ben has been trained in the dark side, the light side. He's seen what works, what doesn't, and he knows all the deep stuff that you can learn from masters of both. Rey is just kind of coming at it with fresh eyes, which has its own benefits, but also its own drawbacks. There's so many things she doesn't know. And when you have two people, it's easier to make good decisions. If you're just on your own, it's a lot easier to mess up and not have someone say, maybe you shouldn't do that. What about this? And, much as I love Rey, her most interesting things for me in the sequels were her interactions with Ben. They just had such an amazing dynamic, and they questioned each other. They called each other on things that they weren't willing to face or things that they needed to change. And I think you need that.
Absolutely. And there's certainly a lot of fan conjecture. There's a lot of conjecture, not a lot of facts. I do have a video on facts that I do need to update, since we've gotten more facts from Steven Soderbergh lately. But we don't have a lot of, facts, but there's some, well-informed conjecture out there. And one of the conjectures that I've heard that would make sense is actually like, because Dave Filoni, for folks who don't know, is like the master of Star Wars canon. And he had 100% approved the script that Lucasfilm did end up, finally paying Scott Burns for. So it fits canon. And of course, Dave would also then be monitoring, a Rey movie, making sure that it fits canon. And so very likely, there was some intention that those things would fit together. And there are lots of people who go back through other, Star Wars products and say, oh, Dave might have been thinking about, something, here or something there. So for example, in the Mandalorian and Grogu series, when Grogu, I forget what the name of the planet is, but Mando gets into a location where he can call to we don't know it's Luke, but he's calling for, like someone to come help him. There are blue butterflies all over the place, which are a symbol for Ben Solo. For folks who don't know, because of a really cute series called Star Wars Rollout. I can provide a link for that as well. It's also on our website. Cute little animated series where everybody rolls like BB-8. It's really adorable. And, like youth Ben Solo rescues a bunch of blue butterflies. And so there are a lot of people who saw those blue butterflies and said, oh, maybe there was an intended tie-in, like a flashback maybe or something, to, young Ben Solo, meeting Grogu somewhere, like they're all, because Dave has all of this stuff up here, and he's moving and, influencing all these, like, oh, maybe, some of that was intended. No way of knowing, right? Can't say for sure, but knowing that it's all passing through one person's head and he knows it all, It's not unreasonable.
So getting into the movie, that's actually a good transition to kind of one of the things I wanted to talk about is what is known about the movie. Like there's no script that's been leaked. There hasn't been any kind of artwork that's been leaked. As far as I know, Adam just did the one interview, as far as I have seen.
That's correct.
So there's not. It seems like it is largely the fan base. All of us are kind of filling in the gaps with either reading the tea leaves or kind of what we want the movie to be, what we think it should be. Like, I said, I think it should be Ben coming to terms with, falling to the dark side and trying to help Rey and, all that. So is there anything that we haven't covered that we do actually know?
Nope.
Let me think through.
Adam Driver's in it.
No. So October 20th. So that's very Canadianism, by the way. Yeah, no. Anyone wants to learn Canadian slang. So October 20th, Adam, tells us that it was a thing. We now know from an interview with Steven Soderbergh that Soderbergh actually did advise that they did talk before Adam decided to do this interview. And Soderbergh's advice to him was, do not editorialize. If you're going to share this story, just say what happened.
Yeah.
Don't apply any, opinions to it. Just here's what happened,
why they made
which Adam then did. And then I've already shared sort of the details about Soderbergh's exchange with Kathleen Kennedy. Has this ever happened before? Nope. This was the first. And then Kathleen Kennedy did kind of what's called an exit interview. Again, I can provide you all these links, Jeff, where she did say that the hunt for Ben Solo was on the back burner, was the word that she used, which sounded to me way better than being on the shelf. Like, the back burner is like a step closer to being production than the shelf. That's me editorializing. So that actually gave a lot of people hope. Like, okay, back burner doesn't sound so bad.
She said that about I read that interview as well with her.
There were a few movies that were on the back burner.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think the Taika Waititi movie, which I am excited about because I am a big fan of his, and I think the other one she said about was the Lando, which the Donald Glover Lando TV show / movie, whatever form it ends up taking. But that's kind of, I think the Lando one is kind of for the people who think Disney doesn't handle things correctly. You can kind of look at it. It went from Justin Simeon started it, and then it's gone from he lost it or had it taken from him, I think, depending on whose version of the facts you read. And then it's gone from a movie to a TV show to, I think, back to a movie. I can't even keep track anymore. But yeah, I think that was another one that she said was on the back burner. So it's like you're absolutely right, though. It's better than canceled. It's better than on the shelf.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, we talked earlier, the fact that there's been no leaks, nothing about the script. We know there was some production art. It's all, very locked down, that a lot of us find that encouraging. And the worst part is, so we haven't heard from Adam again. And the best news would be if he says nothing.
Right.
Because if he says nothing, that means there's a chance he's under an NDA. Right?
So you're sitting there
we're dying to know, but what we can't know,
right.
Like no news is actually good news.
Yeah. So speaking of news, and again, we're recording this on April 11th. A few days ago, there was I wouldn't even call it an interview with Steven Soderbergh, more of some editorializing about an interview. And so, Jen, I know you and I have talked about this a little bit a few days ago, kind of what was in the interview. And then I believe you said earlier, the full interview is out. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. Is there any news, anything good, anything bad in there, anything we can take away?
Nothing really new. It was it came out in two parts. And the first part was a playlist interview with actually the same person who had, who is the only person who shared any of the information about the pre-production process that it had happened. And so I think he's got a vested interest in kind of this story because he kind of got scooped a little bit by Adam Driver because he hadn't been allowed to publish, the bits that he had about the Hunt for Ben Solo pre-production. So he interviewed Steven Soderbergh about the new movie that launched yesterday, April 10th, by Soderbergh. And in it, I think he asked Soderbergh, and Soderbergh was willing to talk about it, and just said that he's not pursuing it. And now that I've read both parts, it's just And again, it wasn't clear from the way that the author, wrote things, or like,
Mm-hmm.
was Soderbergh speaking for Disney? Was he speaking for Adam? And it's now clear that we've seen both parts of it. No, he was just speaking for himself. He said, I'm not pursuing it. Like, I'm not chasing Josh D'Amaro. I'm not chasing Dave Filoni and Lin-Manuel Brennan at Lucasfilm. Like, if it was going to happen, it was with me. I'm adding the words with me. If it was going to happen with me, it would have happened. And so he's kind of let it go, which is disappointing because, I mean, a Soderbergh Star Wars movie. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I've got the article here. So from the first one where, it said the playlist interview about his upcoming film. He is not interested in reopening the door to his abandoned Star Wars project. And then the quote that kind of set the internet off was, his answer was brutally short, quote, no. And then,
but we don't know what the question was. Like, the author didn't actually tell us what was the question you asked him. Could have been, do you like the color blue? And the answer was no. Like,
right. I mean, yeah, it could have been, have you heard anything from Disney? It could have been, exactly. If they called you up, would you do it at this point? Because, I mean, he's moved on. He has other movies he's working on. And like you said, with nothing on the Disney front, with Kathleen Kennedy's, it's on the back burner. I mean, they have the script. All they need is a director.
$3 million for it, if I remember correctly.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Wasn't cheap.
So,
and it was written by Scott Z. Burns, which Kimberly mentioned, who has written like really excellent things. He wrote one of the Bourne movies. I think you said it was Bourne Ultimatum, Kimberly.
I think so. He also
he wrote The Report, which we're doing our watch party on April 18th. He directed that one as well. So he's both a writer and a director. Has worked with Soderbergh. Actually, Soderbergh was a producer on The Report.
Okay.
So, fan choice, if we could recommend to Disney somebody who could fit into this, hey, Scott Z. Burns happened to write it anyway. So, he could be a great choice.
And he worked on Rogue One, I believe.
I think he did.
He worked uncredited on a couple of Star Wars things, actually. Yeah.
So he's familiar with the universe. He wrote the script. I mean, like, hey, we got the guy right here. Somebody ready to go.
And it's not unusual for films to change directors. Yeah. I mean, that was actually probably one of the problems with The Rise of Skywalker, right? Was it Rian Johnson was going to do it, and then I think there was somebody else attached to it, and then finally it was like, hey, JJ, are you free?
Right.
So,
I have working out. I've kind of joked that JJ got the job because they went running to him after what is my opinion manufactured controversy about The Last Jedi. They went running to JJ and said, make people like us again. Which
what's really funny though is people who love the sequels, it's not all the time, but very often their favorite one is actually The Last Jedi. So
it's my favorite one.
It's adorable.
I think Last Jedi is a top tier Star Wars movie. I'd put it.
Well, I mentioned to you, my friend of mine who had never seen any of the Star Wars films, he actually says The Last Jedi is his favorite.
That's it.
Of all of them.
Sometimes The Force Awakens is my favorite because it's just fun. Yeah, it's kind of a retread of Episode 4. You can, follow the story beats easily, but it's also, it's fresh enough and it's fun characters. It's just fun to watch. Last Jedi, I sometimes say, is both my most and least favorite Star Wars movie because I feel like everything with Kylo and Rey was really well done, and the stuff with Finn and Poe was kind of, I needed to work on that a little bit.
But if they could just let me tweak a few things on The Last Jedi, like I think the casino. We're gonna get way off topic. It's fine. It's Star Wars. The casino planet scene where they're talking about like, selling weapons to the First Order and to the Resistance. I was like, Star Wars has never, at least in the movies, never really dove into like the military-industrial complex, and I think that would be such a fascinating topic that you could get into. I mean, it's in some of the books, especially at least in Legends. But anyway, yeah,
it was going to be highly featured in the 3 movies that I wrote in my head in the 8 seconds that I had before Ben died at the end of The Rise of Skywalker. Actually, they were totally going to dismantle that entire military-industrial complex. Yes, this is going to be great.
All right, well, let me ask each of you this then: if Disney came to you and said, we're going to put you in charge of the hunt for Ben Solo, how would your version of the story go?
Jen, you like to write movies in your head. You go first.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. So my original version actually assumed it was going to be directed by Steven Soderbergh. And you can actually see it in that blog post that I mentioned, that dying is hard. Dying isn't the hardest thing to do. And I do not identify as a Raylo. If the romance is there, great. If it's not there, also great. Like, I love Ray. I love Ben. Agnostic as to, you know, the romantic stuff. So my version of the movie actually, thank you for asking about my headcanon. My version of the movie actually begins with Ray and Ben on very opposite ends of the universe. And I don't know why Ben comes back to life. I don't care. Dave Filoni can figure that out. But, you know, he figures out that. And so I started actually with some Soderbergh style angst, you know, because of course he doesn't know where he's been. He's not sure what's gone on. How long have I been gone? I like to imagine he'd have some sense that he's been gone for a while, but doesn't know and doesn't, of course, recognize anyone around him. I also imagine some Soderbergh humor. Like, remember, he left his sweater on Exegol. So when you come back from the dead, do you come back with your clothes? I don't know, you know. So maybe there'd be a little bit of like, a little bit of, I need to steal some clothing. I also need to steal a ship. So there'd be a little bit of Soderbergh heist, you know, going on. Because, you know, he's so good at writing entertaining stories like that. And then, of course, from the other side of the universe, right, we've got other things happening, right? Somehow, you know, probably through the diet or something, Ray figures out, oh my gosh, Ben's back. And how do I get to him before the people who want to try to throw him in a prison cell or hang him, you know, just like show up? I mean, how they would, who knows? But anyway, you know, like, so he's trying to like get back to, you know, people that he knows, you know, in some way, while, you know, probably avoiding some remnants of First Order, you know, who may or may not know what he actually, you know, looks like as, you know, without a mask on. But there are probably enough, you know, generals that didn't die on Exegol that do, and you know, we don't like this guy. Ray trying to get him, trying to beat her friends in the you know, new government to you know, and meeting somewhere in the middle, you know. So hijinks ensue. For me, it was more of an adventure movie. With probably, you know, some satisfying, you know, romantic reconnection at the end for those who love it. And I couldn't specifically identify it, like, because of course Soderbergh, every one of Steven Soderbergh's movies is a little bit different. But if I had to compare it to anything, you know, maybe a little bit like Ocean's 11 in some of those regards, where Danny Ocean starts off and I know he didn't write that movie, but, you know, he directed the remake, where he kind of starts off, Danny Ocean starts off in jail. You know, Ben just got out of jail. Well, they both just got out of jail, but for Ben, it was whatever ghost world he was in. And then, you know, gets the girl at the end.
All right, I'd watch that. I mean, I'm going to watch it. If it comes out, I'm watching it regardless. First day.
Exactly.
I mean, Disney knows they're going to get my money.
Yeah, it's for me.
Kimberly, what would you do?
So I honestly have no clue what the overall story would be. I'm guessing anything they write will be cooler than what I come up with in my head. So I don't even try with that. But I do have a wish list. I mean, I do think Ray is going to play a big role just because she always has in his story. And Adam, in an interview about The Rise of Skywalker, you know, Ben Solo at the end, he doesn't know anything about what the future holds, but he knows as long as he's with Rey and following her, he's on the right track. And so I do think that they're going to get back together in some way. But I also think he needs to find his own purpose, his own moral compass. He's always let somebody else tell him what to do. His parents, Luke, Snoke, now Rey. What does Ben Solo want? What does he care about? What's he willing to fight for and live for? The second thing on my wish list is I really would love to see them include Hayden Christensen and Mark Hamill, Anakin and Luke in some way, Force Ghosts, World Between Worlds, whatever. I think it could be a great way for their family to kind of find peace, and they would, I'm sure, have good advice because they've been light side, dark side. They've been around the block. It would be a chance for Ben to finally talk with his grandfather. Maybe we find out why Anakin never talked to him before when he obviously needed some good advice. And it would be a great way to tie the trilogies together. You got the prequels, originals, sequels. They're all in this wonderful synergistic conversation or whatever it is. And last but not least, I'd like to see the other great sequels characters get something meaningful to do, because Finn and Poe, great characters, great dynamic. They had nothing meaningful to do in episode 9. They totally screwed up in episode 8. You know, what have they been doing in the 2 years or 10 years or whatever? And what are they going to do in this big story that's such a wonderful script that we keep hearing about? So,
Absolutely.
that's what I was.
Yeah. So to reinforce what Kimberly's saying, so the hunt for Ben Solo would also be like, it's an actual hunt, but also that metaphorical hunt, right? Of growth and understanding. And with an actor like Adam, you can do that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think it would be amazing if it took both angles.
Something I don't know if I actually know this. In Adam's interview or any of the things that Steven has said, did they title the script The Hunt for Ben Solo, or is that just kind of what fans ran with?
Nope, that's what they
No,
called
that
it.
is the title.
Okay.
It's code name.
That's what I thought, but I realized I was not wasn't actually 100% on that.
And its
All
code
right,
name was Quiet Leaves, apparently.
But I love that too, because quiet leaves, well, is that a noun or a verb? Right? Is
I
that
don't know.
quiet departs?
Right.
Which I think that could be right. Adam emerges from a quiet cocoon of, a ghostly existence, right? Not quiet anymore. People trying to kill you around every corner now, right? Or is it quiet leaves falling, right? Which is about change of seasons, growth, development. Oh, we don't.
Could be both.
We don't know. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do think you're right with The Hunt for Ben Solo, that it would have to kind of be people looking for him for good or evil purposes, either to save him or kill him. And along with, but yeah, he's got to, figure out who he is, come to terms with who he was, and, whether he's doing that by himself, whether he's doing that with Rey, whether they're trying to find each other, whether Rey's trying to kill him, you never know. I doubt that one, but
yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think you guys have kind of hit a lot of the points that I've kind of thought in my headcanon as well. All right, we're closing in an hour. We should probably wrap this up. So
sure.
I do always like to ask people this, though, just because it's always interesting. Kind of for each of you, like, what's your Star Wars origin story? Like, how did you get into it?
Do you want to start, Kimberly?
So I am a year younger than Star Wars. I was born a year after the original came into the theaters, and it's always just kind of been this thread in my life. My family watched the movies. I had a little record player that would play the story of Episode 4, and I didn't realize what a geek I was until in my 20s. I was with some friends, and they decided to play Star Wars Trivial Pursuit. We were in teams, and I realized it was just me and one other guy on the other team answering all the questions. Who said this line? What was this? What's the name of that planet? Tatooine. Like, I am a geek after all. And then it just became something fun to talk about with my kids. I have 3 teenagers and 1 almost teenager, and it's been something fun to joke about, to discuss, what drives a character, laugh at prequels, memes, just it's been a fun family thing. And yeah, we all want to see Ben Solo come back.
Yes, we do.
Absolutely. And I'm a similar age to Kimberly. And so, I grew up, I cannot remember a time that I did not know who Luke Skywalker was. Mm-hmm. and The Last Jedi actually came out, while I was still a child. And I'm sure my parents showed that movie to me when I was too young to see it.
Return of the Jedi?
But they wanted to see it, right?
Return of the Jedi, I'm guessing? You said Last Jedi.
Yeah, sorry, but then I said Last Jedi. I meant Return of the Jedi. Sorry.
Anyway, so Return of the Jedi.
Yes, Return of the Jedi. I'm sure I saw that too young, because it's a little bit scary, right? With the Emperor murdering Darth Vader at the end, like, yikes. But don't regret it one bit. So, I have always, loved the original films. I think they're masterful filmmaking. Again, I know nothing about making movies, but because I love Star Wars, I kind of like dug into, as a in my 20s, like, why did George Lucas, make them this way? Mm-hmm. Became a fan of Akira Kurosawa movies, so really have always had like just a little thing in the back of my head, and could not imagine the world of cinema without Star Wars. Like, they invented the idea of bigatures, and like, and well, they didn't invent it, but they invented new things that you could do. There's a reason that Skywalker sound is still out there helping other movies get made, because they figured out Foley in a way that nobody else had ever done. Like, George just invented so many things to bring his vision to life, and I admire I guess part of me admires, maybe this is now part of my personality. I admire someone who's just like, I need this thing to happen. Well, nobody knows how to do that. Well, we're going to figure it out then. You know? And that's how I feel about the Hunt for Ben Solo. Well, Disney said no. Well, that's too bad. How do we get them to say yes again?
Right. All right. That's awesome. All right. For anyone who is interested in joining the Hunt for Ben Solo movement, we're going to have all the links down in the show notes below. Jenn, Kimberly, thank you both for coming on. This has been a lot of fun, and we will, like I said, any last things you want to plug before we go?
Please follow us on our social media. Please consider joining our Discord server if you might be interested in helping us to plan these things. Even if you're not someone who feels like you're creative, we would still welcome your opinion on the creative things that other people are coming up with. So please do think about it. I will share that I ended up on Discord. I don't think I shared this story. I had found folks on Blue Sky. Remember, I joined Blue Sky because that's where Steven Soderbergh was. And on Blue Sky, I had engaged with a post and I said, hey, somebody should probably create a Google map, and then we can plot where the missing posters are, because like missing posters were kind of like where our campaign started. And I said, somebody should make a Google map and plot the missing posters on the Google map. Wouldn't that be fun to see our reach? And they said, here's the link to the Discord. You can do that.
That's what happens when you volunteer something.
Exactly. Yeah. Somebody became me. So.
Yep. That's always how it goes.
Yeah, but we actually just reached a really exciting milestone. I've got a video coming up, but I don't mind sharing with you. We have now got a missing poster, a photograph of a missing poster on every inhabited continent on Earth.
That's awesome. Actually, tell people about the missing posters. They are a lot of fun.
Sure, absolutely. So kind of one of the early initiatives for our campaign, and it's still something that we work on every day. Oh, Kimberly's got one. There we go.
Yes.
Right on. Is the idea that, maybe someone, maybe Ray, maybe somebody else kind of gets the idea that maybe Ben is back. And so has anybody seen this guy? And so folks are invited to print one off. We have it in at least a dozen languages. I think we're getting close to 20 now, actually. That you can download as PDFs, on savebensolo.com. And maybe ask your local comic book store if it's okay to put it up. Maybe, ask a bookstore if it's okay to put it up. One of our biggest fans in Sweden, apparently Sweden has a culture of like community billboards. So she's got one in every community that's, within driving distance. And there's a QR code on all the posters that take you to savebensolo.com. So people can kind of learn, what's going on in the fan campaign, and encourage people to join. Every share, all those little things. I mean, Disney can track that. It's public information. And, if we can show that there is genuine interest in the movie going public for a Ben Solo movie, then that just gives them more of the reason to say, hey, if we're going to sell movie tickets and merch, let's do it.
I should mention one other thing that I find really encouraging is that Bob Iger, who was the CEO of Disney who shot this down, just retired. And he's been replaced by Josh D'Amaro, who strikes me as someone who really cares about what fans want, Disney magic, happy endings. And I mean, we want a Disney happy ending for Ben and Ray. Who would watch Beauty and the Beast if the Beast stayed dead at the end? Then that's not a happy thing. And we want that for Ben too. Bring him back.
All right, Disney. Bob Iger, if you're listening, or Josh D'Amaro, if you're listening, watching, bring back Ben Solo. We're all here for it. All right. Once again, Jenn, Kimberly, thank you so much for coming on. You can find the Death Star Human Resources Department at www.deathstarhr.com. And may the Force be with you.
Always.
Always.